Grand, thank you. So we'll slip straight away then into item one. Jonathan, I've had apologies from Councillor Isaacs and Yule. Have you had any others?
I haven't had any additional ones, Chair.
Okay. Does anyone know of anyone else that wants to send us any apologies? No? Okay, we'll crack on then. Any declarations specific to this interest over and above declarations we've made in the past? No, excellent. We'll move on to item 3 then. This is quite unusual. I seldom have an opportunity to make any announcements, but firstly, I will do this one. The first one is to welcome Cheryl Hucker, who has joined us as a new lay member to this committee or subcommittee. Cheryl, good to see you. Cheryl joined us as a result of Sherry resigning earlier in the year and a good recruitment process led by Jane. So thank you, Jane, for doing that for us. And Cheryl, welcome to the committee. Hopefully it'll all begin to make sense reasonably soon. A second point I have to make people aware of is that the Corporate Joint Committee approved an amendment to our terms of reference for this committee recently. We have been having difficulty being quorate, so the numbers have been changed from 11 members to 6 members, with a split of 4 elected and 2 lay members. So that means we should now sail past our challenges of quoracy that we've had in the past. And the third thing that I'd like to make members aware of is that we were provided with a copy of the Independent Remuneration Panel for Wales's annual report released recently, along with the CJC's members' scheme of remuneration allowances. There don't appear to be many changes that are really going to hit any of us, but it's there for your information. And in relation to that final point, the remuneration, we should note that responsibility for members' remuneration transferred from IRPW to the Democracy and Boundary Commission Cymru on the 1st of April. So they will no doubt at some point be getting their head around what and how we are and how we operate. Any questions on those 3 points?
Sorry, Chair. Can I just sure. Say we've lost your camera.
My camera is back, hopefully now.
Yeah, there you are. Yes.
I must say, I feel very lucky to have anything because I'm now on my 3rd device this morning. I couldn't access Teams on my computer. My phone doesn't work with my hearing aids, and now this is device number 3. If this fails, you're on your own, folks. So we'll go straight on then to item 4. Item 4, minutes of the last meeting, but hopefully everyone had a chance to read and digest. Before we look at any issues from them, can someone propose them? Can I have a proposer and seconder to say for the minutes, please? Andrew proposing, thank you. Anyone to second? I don't see any hands up. Thank you, Kate, that's kind. All in favour of that? We're happy with those? Good, thank you. Any particular issues rising from them? No, I see no hands raised. I have one point, if I can just scroll down. It may well be buried in we may come back to it later, and that's at paragraph 7.3, where we were talking about the engagement and early engagement. I just want to make sure we're going to get some progress on that. Liam, that's probably a conversation you and I need to be picking up in greater detail and getting the arrangements for earlier engagement and wider understanding. And I think with Cheryl's arrival now, that's a good timely reminder of that. But no action required right now, just to follow up at some point.
Yeah, gotcha.
Anything from anybody else? No? Good. In that case, we'll move on to the actions that please, Jonathan, back to you. It looks like a long document, but just so members are aware, I've asked Jonathan to keep it as a long document, because if we lose lose sight or record of the things that we have achieved, we'll sometimes wonder, what are we achieving? So it's good, I think, that they stay there. But Jonathan, over to you.
Yes, Chair, hopefully members will feel we've made quite a lot of progress since the last meeting. So we've circulated a governance framework document, a responsible investment policy, an ESG scorecard, and a list of policies in the policy framework, and that happened quite sort of soon after the last meeting in January. And obviously since then we also circulated the key assumptions for the 2025-26 budget. See, we've got here, the chair has made the announcement around the change to the quorum of the subcommittee, so that's one of the completed. I don't know if anyone wants to sort of look specifically at any of these sort of actions in detail. I might need to sort of also have sort of some assistance from my colleagues if anyone sort of wants to go into anything that's not specifically governance. If not, we could go to one of the specific actions, which was the development plan. Chair, obviously we've sort of looked at this in a sort of pre-meeting, and we've sort of sketched a bit more detail for the first quarter. Again, this is a discussion document for members, so really sort of those particular areas that you would like to see on this list, we can obviously add. The first one is around the sort of governance induction session, and sort of look sort of how it's gone sort of first year. This is obviously the inaugural year, and then sort of how what we're looking for in sort of the second year. And the idea we had was potentially bring in some chairs from other CCR boards to provide their experience of how it's gone, sort of ideas they might have that would help us. And then we've added some sort of potential ideas, sort of away days, potentially like Tramshed or Aberthor, and we've kept those development sessions that were sort of have been on the development plan, including session on strategic risk, and sort of managing corporate risks and anti-fraud, bribery and corruption. So if members have any thoughts, whether it's now or sort of post meeting, just let us know.
Thank you, Jonathan. So let's take those in two parts then. Let's deal with the action log first, and the development plan as a secondary item. Andrew, I think you had your hand up early doors there.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to pick up on the status of a couple of actions, just maybe for my benefit. If I turn to action 2 initially, I think I understand the sentiment behind the comment, but I would note and maybe ask the auditor to comment that it is usual for the audit function to provide a strategy or strategic plan which sets out the longer term ambitions for a function. So I just wanted to check, Chair, whether that was the intention here or not.
Can I response from internal audit on that?
Can I just clarify whether you mean a strategy in terms of our overall aims and objectives as a service, or are you looking at the longer term strategy in terms of areas to be covered, please?
Potentially both, because it's usual for public sector audit functions to provide both documents. I do recognise that the global internal audit standards are somewhat imprecise in that regard, but I just wanted to understand, Mark, what your intention was in this area, please.
Yeah, so the public sector audit standards, which were in practice in place during the year that we're talking about, 24-25, there's no requirement in there for the internal audit service to provide what would be our business plan, in effect, in terms of setting out our objectives and so forth. The global internal audit standards do require that, and that's something that will be built into the work plan of this committee for the next year, where you will receive a copy of our delivery plan where it sets out our aims and objectives, and that's something that members will then be able to scrutinise then. In terms of the question around a longer term plan of auditable areas, the public sector internal audit standards require us to pull together a risk-based audit plan for each year. And that's what we do, and that's what we have done. And my intentions are to deliver a risk-based audit plan for each year, setting out the risky areas or those areas identified at risk that internal audit identify, the section 151 officer identifies and other members of CJC's management committee, and that'll be presented each year. So I've got no intention, unless committee says otherwise, of providing a longer term list of areas, because my opinion would be that they need to be risk-based, and if they're risk-based, then they get included in the plan for the current year.
Okay, no, thank you. That's helpful. I think the strategic piece was important, and I think you've answered that to my satisfaction. So thank you for that. If I could then move on to Chair to a couple of the other actions, just to really pick up where we are with these. I'm just scrolling down the list. Okay, action number 9. So I do accept that a link to a web page has been provided, which sets out a variety of policies and procedures, plans and strategies, which is of some interest. But the action, if I go back to what the action originally was, my question was, which of those documents are within scope of this committee? And I don't think we've quite answered that question yet. So I'm just wondering how best to do that. And maybe it's a question for Liam and then yourself, Chair, whether you have any views.
Liam, any thoughts?
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. So ultimately, the committee has to assure itself across the entire system of internal control.
Yep.
So in terms of any policies and procedures within the organisation, technically they fall under the jurisdiction of the committee to assure themselves. How the committee chooses to do that, I suppose it's back to Mark's point around taking a risk-based approach to internal audit. That's the same way that we would bring certain policies to you. So, for example, our treasury management strategy is on the agenda here. We've brought our anti-bribery, fraud and corruption policy previously. But in some ways, it's back to the committee. If there's any areas that they feel they want more assurance on, then we can bring that forward.
Thank you, Liam. I think we're at a point where this segues into Jonathan's second point, which is the development piece, which I think is probably the most important thing that's running through my mind right now. Is, you know, we've had a year of this. Where are we now? What do we need to improve, correct, start doing, and then set out our stall going forward? When I discussed this briefly in a pre-meeting a week or so back with officials, I suggested that we probably need an out-of-committee workshop, preferably together, face to face, to kick this stuff around, because it butts up against the conversations we've had about the early engagement of members of this committee with officials in some processes, which I'm still keen to move forward on. It butts up against the use of lay members to help officials develop certain subject areas, which I'm still keen to get some progress on. So my proposal would be that we draw together a first year review, an assessment of what it is we should have been doing and any gaps, identify the ideas that we've discussed again, and then nail them in a workshop together with officials sometime in the next month or so. Any feedback?
Sounds sensible to me, Chair.
Any others?
I'd certainly support that, Chair.
Good. I think just to add a little bit to it, I think it's important to come together to it, because sometimes a personal reflection here is I sometimes struggle when I come into a meeting. I've read all the papers, but it's comments that stimulate the next level of thinking, other people's comments, and working in absolute isolation doesn't help us to move forward. You know, I've given this meeting a few hours here, there, and reading there and there and there. We've got this morning together, and then it's over. There's nothing that carries us through. So coming together to nail this stuff, I think would be really helpful. And we can then set out a proper development plan for this subcommittee. I'm keen that it's not called training. We need to call it development. You know, how we develop as an entity, and how we also share our wisdom back to the organisation, because that's what I think we have an important part to play in that. Cheryl, your hand up.
I was only going to say that you know, I'm on the governance committee for Blaenau Gwent Council, and we've recently adopted an approach where we are sort of supplementing our formal meetings with informal sessions where we get together and we discuss you know, things that are concerning us, that we want a little bit more assurance on, and it's really helped to put the meat on the bones of what we're aiming for and how we get that assurance, and it's been really beneficial. So I would absolutely advocate what you're saying.
Thank you very much, Cheryl. I think that just shows, you know, that's an example of external value adds coming into this via the committee. I think that would be worth noting. Phil, to you, please.
Yeah, just a comment, Chair. We derive elected members derive our position on this committee from our leaders or another strand within our councils. And for us to develop strategy, it would really need to be with their, not necessarily agreement, but certainly their wide consensus to the way we're going, because obviously that's where CCR comes from. Does that make sense?
Yes, I think my expectation to some extent is how do we tap into the non-political activity within the committee to add value. That's and help develop the strategies around the development of some of the the more administrative policies rather than the delivery policies.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, right. Any other comments on that? So if I, in that case, ask Jonathan and or Leo and others to knock together a workshop for us in the next 4 to 6 weeks, something like that, so we can have a crack at sorting all this out, and that will set us on the path for the coming year. And also from that, Jonathan, will fall out the development requirements within item 5, which you've got of that sort of tabulated development session. Okay, are we all happy with that? Grand. In that case, we'll move on then, please, to item 6, which is to Liam on page 22 of the pack, if you're following there, which is the 2024 month 9 revenue budget monitoring update. Liam, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So this report sets out the revenue budget at the end of quarter 3. Members will recall that the revenue budget this year is split into 2 elements, which is our statutory duty element and then our CCR City Deal element. So if I take the statutory duties element first, that is projected to underspend by £27,000. And this is mainly as a result of an underspend on the regional transport plan non-employee costs. And that's just due to some reprofiling of certain aspects of the budget. Moving on then to the CCR City Deal budget. So that's projected currently to overspend by approximately £143,000. And some of the key variances to bring to members' attention, firstly, is an overspend on staffing costs in legal and governance due to an underestimation of the requirements that we would need as we become established as a public body. This has been partially offset by underspends in some other staffing budgets. Within supplies and services, there are a number of smaller variances then, including consultancy costs and the cost of some policy work that is again assisting with the ongoing transition to a public body. An overspend on our support services, which members will recall relates to a number of SLAs that we have in place with RCT. So again, when we set last year's budget, we had to estimate ahead of any real discussions with RCT. We had to make an estimate of the level of support and service level agreements that would be required. Following those discussions, we needed more support, so that was extended. And then finally, there was an increased spend on our external audit fee as well. So they are some of the key variances. The overall position is an improvement on the month 6 position, and work is being finalised within the final quarter then of this year to reduce that deficit further. So a key part of that is the capitalisation potential of some of our staffing costs. So we support a number of capital projects across the organisation, and particularly as our capacity has increased, our ability to do that internally as opposed to outsourcing that has increased as well. So we're just working through an exercise to determine how much of staffing costs in certain areas such as legal and governance and finance can be capitalised. So hopefully that will naturally reduce that position, and then the year-end position will be brought to the next committee. So happy to take any questions or comments on this report, Chair.
Thank you, Liam. Helpful. Any questions from anybody, please? No? Well done, Liam, getting through with no questions. That's always a bonus. Good. In that case, we're asked to note the revenue budget position, etc., and also that we'll get regular updates. Thank you for presenting that. I think we're happy to note that. Anyone disagree? Good. In that case, we'll move on to item 7, which is Q3 24-25 Treasury Management Performance Report on page 30 of the pack. And again, to Liam, please.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. This is another report for Norton, and it's a standard quarterly report that outlines our treasury management performance across a range of indicators. And again, this is at the end of Q3, so the Q3 position. You'd be familiar with this type of report, well, members in particular from their own local authorities, but as I said, this comes to each committee as well. The key difference for us as a CJC is that we don't currently have any borrowing, so many of the indicators within the report are not applicable to us. So the key performance indicator for us is interest yield, which was £850,000 within the quarter, and at the end of Q3 it was a cumulative total for the year of just over £2.3 million, and that was at an average yield of 4.69%. There were no instances of non-compliance with the principles in the Treasury Management Code or our Treasury Management Strategy within the quarter, so full compliance throughout the quarter. And again, Chair, it's a report for Norton, but happy to take any questions or comments on it. Thank you.
Thank you once again, Liam. Any comments or questions, please? Andrew.
Firstly, thanks for the report, and I'm going to make the same question that I have done previously. So, noting the yield that you've just outlined, are you satisfied with that yield received, Liam?
Yes, I am. Thanks, Andrew. I think it's very much linked to the base rate, but I know we've had discussions, particularly, and I'll come on to in our treasury management strategy. We have very low risk appetite with our treasury management lending. Sorry. So yes, I am happy with that. We have more of a risk appetite in our wider investments, but for our treasury management investments, we have a very low risk appetite, and are therefore comfortable with the yield that brings in.
Thank you. Yes, and you've preempted my next question about whether this very low risk appetite is appropriate, but we'll come on to that later on, possibly. Thank you.
Thank you both. Anything else from anybody, please? No, good. Well, as Liam said, we're asked to note the content of the report as presented, and that we will get regular updates, and I think we're happy to note those. Thank you very much, Liam. We'll move on to item 8, page 44 of the pack, which is the risk management update, and again to you, please, Liam.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So again, this is a standard report that's brought to each subcommittee meeting, and it includes an up-to-date corporate risk register for the committee to consider. So paragraph 6 and 7 outline the risk management arrangements that are in place, which is led by our performance and delivery team. In terms of the corporate risk register, the executive team consider that on at least a quarterly basis. and the corporate risk register is included at Appendix 1. And January was the first time that this report was brought. So for the second time now, you'll note that each risk has a direction of travel noted against it. So just to take you to paragraph 11, Chair, where the key changes since the last committee meeting are outlined. So firstly, a risk has been added in relation to a potential loss of data or access to core systems as a result of a cyber attack. You'll recall from the January committee and the action log that was something that was raised at the last subcommittee meeting in terms of whether this should be on a corporate risk register. So I've taken that back to the executive team, and we've considered that, and that has subsequently been added. Secondly, then a new risk has been added related to the uncertainty of the future funding model for CCR, and this links with some other corporate risks around organisational capacity and inability to focus on our core purpose. So these combined risks are mitigated somewhat by the implementation of an organisational restructure, the internal aspect of which is now complete, with it being implemented from the 1st of April. We still have a fairly large number of vacancies across the organisation at the moment, so we've now moved into the external phase of recruitment for that. So capacity is still a challenge for us, and even with a fully staffed structure, capacity remains a challenge because of the budgetary envelope that we're operating within. So we're also planning an independent review within the next 12 months to consider what the resourcing requirements are for an organisation of the size and scale of the CJC, with the contractual obligations and the statutory obligations that we've got. And alongside that, we are lobbying government for core funding, with some success, I might add. And we're also feeding into the development of a CJC prospectus as well. So lots of mitigations in place on those sort of intrinsically linked risks, but they are the key changes since the last committee meeting. And finally, Chair, at the last meeting, the committee asked for a statement from me to be included in the report on the adequacy of the risk management arrangements in place for the reporting period, and you'll note that that's included now in paragraph 15 of the report. So yeah, nothing else from me, Chair, but as always, happy to take any questions or comments.
Thank you, Liam. Glad or pleased to see the inclusion or recognition of cyber as a risk. It's one that I've hit for real in another organisation that lost all its data, not just a little bit. It didn't have its sniff. They lost everything, and it took probably 3 years to get to a state they'd called recovered. So it is a serious issue. One question, specific question. You have cyber training for all staff. Will that lead to organisational accreditation?
Say that again, sorry, Chair. I missed that question there.
You've got cyber training for all staff as one of the mitigations, which is great. Are you intending to lead to any cyber accreditation?
I'll have to give that some thought and come back to you,
Yeah,
Chair.
just take that as a question, that's fine.
Yeah,
that's fine.
a lot of the controls that we have in place are linked to RCT as our ICT SLA provider. But I would need to take that away and discuss with RCT what specific accreditations that they already have in place. I was just going to say, unless Mark has some of the answers, I can see he's put his hand up there.
Mark, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, so I think it'll be useful just to give a bit of background really in terms of what that training would mean for CJC staff, is that it helps staff to be aware of potential pitfalls when sent certain emails, for example, or clicking on certain links. And I think it's called Cyber Ninjas course. So I think that it'll be a training course for staff just to raise awareness rather than leading to any type of accreditation. Because I think that the controls in place across the systems within RCT, which of course the CJC benefit from, are linked to other forms of industry standards, things like the payment card industry standards and those types of things. So I think that there's no formal accreditation, but just to give a flavour, that the training received will be around awareness of clicking on links, questioning links, and knowing what to do if you think something looks a bit dodgy, really.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Phil, to you.
Thank you, Chair. Could you expand on the new risk relating to uncertainty over future funding models for the CCR, if you're able to, because it might not be within your remit to expand on it, just to report it, but that's obviously very, well, let's say interesting.
Yeah, of course, Councillor. So since the CJC is established, we have contractual obligations through our ongoing contractual obligations, sorry, through City Deal, but we have statutory obligations as well, which currently we receive no co-funding for. Alongside that, our wider investment fund balances are reducing, and while we've got our investments achieving returns, which I'll come on to in one of the other reports on the agenda, the sort of longer term resourcing strategy and the funding mechanism that goes with that is something that needs more work in the coming year. So yeah, that longer term picture and the funding that comes with it there's some uncertainty around that at this point in time. So we that's why it's highlighted as a risk on the corporate risk register.
Okay, thank you. Chair, I did note your appeal, I think it was at the last meeting, for an improved financial settlement from the local authorities. Is this tied to that one?
I wouldn't say it's tied to that necessarily. I mean, part of our funding comes through from the local authorities, and we have discussions each year, and ultimately the CJC need to sign off our core revenue budget, which is, as I touched on, is incredibly tight and leads to capacity issues. But it's not as a direct result of that it's been included.
Okay, thank you.
I think that it probably takes us into the realms of making sure we are thinking some of the unthinkable. That's the issue. What we can't have is a risk register that we recognise the comfortable risks. We really need to be thinking about the extremes. You know, it probably wasn't at the top of NATO's risk register that America would withdraw from NATO, but it's pretty likely to be there now. You know, and we need to have those elements of thinking. So big changes in funding, we don't want to think about them, but we really need to, just in case. So I'll just leave that thought with you. Andrew, your hand, please.
I think Cheryl was next, Chair.
Oh, sorry, I didn't notice. That's my screen again. Cheryl, to you then, please.
I was just going to ask about the way the risk register is set out. Is the risk, you've got the likelihood and the impact there and the overall risk recorded, is that before the mitigation is accounted for or after? I've worked in some organisations where we have to try to make our risk registers much more engaging and current and deliverable, that the risks are articulated in such a way that, you know, we can see, you know, if such and such and such happens, then we have the impacts of that, and then we have the resulting in what the actual outcome is going to be, and from that then the mitigation is and we risk score that then on that risk. And then we have mitigation put in place, and then we reassess what risk we are aiming for, what level of risk we are aiming for. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, Cheryl. So this is the current risk, so that post mitigation risk, and what sits this is a summary of the corporate risk register. What sits behind this with our program management team is a lot more detail. So if and this is an evolving report that's brought to the committee as well. It's only the second time that it's come. So if members feel that they would want some more information included in the summary, then absolutely we can bring that.
Yeah, it's just like, as an example, I'm looking at the, it may be my naivety because I'm new to the group, but you've got like mitigation for the procurement, the first item on the risk register, the procurement matter, and you've got the chief executives group. It would be good to understand what work that is, what work is being undertaken there. It may be, I don't know, perhaps as part of our informal sort of development days, that we could have a bit more of a session on risk, or maybe that I've missed it perhaps, to understand it a little bit more about what risks you're encountering. But it just feels to me as if there's, looking at it, it doesn't really give me assurance on what progression we are making against those risks. And I realise that they are high risks, and therefore the direction, the movement on that may be painfully slow for some of them, because they are they are going to be quite complex. But it would be good to have a section in there to see, of an update to say, well, this is where we are now with it, and this is what our risk stands at the moment. You're going to get to a stage where you were never going to reduce that risk any further, but that should be our aim, shouldn't it? To try to sort of have a plan in place that manages those risks to the point where they become manageable or less impactful.
Yeah, absolutely, Cheryl. So we did have a wider session on risk as part of the development with last year. But I think there's a couple of things here. One around maybe providing some more information with the report, and Mark has taken a look at our report and provided me with some feedback in terms of how we can do that as well, just as part of the risk management work that he's doing. So I can do that for the next committee. But as a new member, Cheryl, I appreciate there's a lot of getting up to speed with things. So more than happy to put a session in the diary to talk you through how we deal with risk management, some of the broader detail that sits underneath some of these corporate risks, just as part of your induction process.
Yeah, and it's going to be very complex, isn't it? Because you're dealing with all the other authorities, and it's how they are managing their risks as well. So I do appreciate that there's complexities there, and as I said, it's probably my naivety as just being a new member, but thank you.
Nothing naive about it at all. I thought the questions were excellent, and your suggestion that it's something that comes through at the workshop I mentioned earlier on in this meeting, absolutely on the money with that point. There are a few people around the table here who've got background in risk that can really add value to this conversation. So thank you for bringing that up, Cheryl, and hopefully, Jonathan, you're scribbling a note that we need to add that to our agenda for that session. So Andrew, I'll come to you next, please.
Thank you. Firstly, Liam, thanks for the report, and thank you in particular for the incorporation of your comment at paragraph 15. I think that's a helpful start. I have a couple of comments, albeit they've been somewhat overtaken by comments my colleagues have already made. My first comment could be perceived as being unhelpful, and it's your first risk on your register, which talks about the procurement matter. I would suggest to you, Liam, that this is an issue as opposed to a risk, because if the matter has already crystallised. Yet again, you just may want to reflect upon how you reflect that within this document. And then, of course, that leads on to Cheryl's points about whether the mitigations, or more precisely the actions you are suggesting, are appropriate and will be sufficient to address that issue. More broadly, if you look at the direction of travel arrow in the final column of the risk register, which is yet again very helpful, but for my benefit, Liam, is that direction of travel telling me a prospective view of the risk, or is it telling me how the risk has moved over the last quarter? Which is it, please?
Yeah, so on that final point, it's the movement since the last quarter, Andrew, rather than a target risk, is I suppose is the other option you're putting forward, is it?
not target risk, but sort of it's really picking that back up on Cheryl's point about are the mitigations you've set out appropriate? Will they deliver the desired outcome? I think that's the conversation. That's where we need to get to, and that links into the chair's proposal to have a session where we can just talk this through to understand this information more fully and how we get comfortable that the actions you have in place will deliver the right outcome.
Great. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you. Phil, to you, please.
Thank you, Chair. I wasn't going to touch on Aberthaw because of the obvious sensitivity at the moment, but the mitigation, I wouldn't have thought that the appointment of an additional auditor to conduct an independent inquiry, I assume at cost, would throw much light onto the situation, and the idea of auditing this will probably be carried out by the legal procedure that, as I understand, has been launched against CCR. Would someone like to comment on that and, probably touch on how much this independent auditor would cost us?
I'm not sure we're going to get too many answers around this one, but I'll turn to Liam for the response, please.
Yes, so at this stage, for legal reasons, we can't go into too much detail on this one, but we'll be able to brief the committee in more detail at the appropriate time, Chair.
Jane wants to come in.
Yeah, Chair, I appreciated that you couldn't go into detail, but I think the appointment of an auditor is not a detail because it'll be carried out by another body, for better or worse.
Jane, do you want to come in here, Jane?
Just very briefly, Chair, if I may. Completely accept the point that you're making, Councillor Houahin. I think that it's two separate matters that they're looking at. So obviously a legal proceedings look at a specific issue. The review that follows it is intended to be a lessons learned exercise. But if you want to stay on the call at the conclusion of the meeting, we can perhaps give you a little bit more detail.
I don't think that's necessary. Thank you, Jane. And as long as you've got your eye on the ball, you can't undo what's been done.
No, it's intended as a lessons learned exercise for us so that we can grow from it.
Yeah, but obviously if our governance procedures are strong enough, it shouldn't have happened, as little as I understand about it. But
Okay, we'll park that one for now. The offer is there from Jane if you want to pick it up at the end of the meeting. And we as Liam said, there is little that can be said at the moment, but we will get I know we will get a fuller briefing when the timing is right. And okay. I look forward to that at some point, and I'm sure we can pick up with more detailed questions ourselves. Any more on the risk management?
I'll stay on, Jane. Yeah.
Any more on the risk management update? Sorry, there is a hand up. I can't see.
Councillor Good, Chair.
Thank you very much. Again, my screen.
Thank you, Chair. Jane, I just wanted to come back on that really, and I'm sure it wasn't your intention, but I think if any further briefing is going to be given on this, then all committee members should be party to it. I don't think saying, oh, well, one member who's asked can stay on at the end of the meeting to get more information really is in keeping with the spirit of the standing orders and our committee. So I just
you're right in the sense that wasn't my intention, Councillor.
Thank you. Any more on the risk management update then, please? We're asked to note the content of the corporate risk register. I think we've done that well enough, and we'll therefore move on to item 9 on page 55 of the pack, the annual letter of the to the CTAC of the work of the Governance and Audit Subcommittee. It's going to feel strange, but I'm going to invite Jane to introduce an item of a letter that I'm signing.
It is strange, so I'll hand it straight back to you, Chair. All I've done is put a cover report in that appends your letter. Chair, I think all of the committee, who've had an opportunity to read it, will see that the letter is intended to be one that's produced to the Corporate Joint Committee, updating the committee on the work of this subcommittee over the past 12 months. And if I may, it summarises the work of the committee during its first years and talks of the ambition to continue to mature and develop the committee's ability to fulfil its functions. Can I hand back to you, Chair?
Thanks, Jane. Yeah, I think the important thing really, I think, is that it's sort of a bedding in period. But now, for me, the most important message is that we've got a good mix of members in the committee and external views and experience that is a valuable resource looking to the future. And that links back again to the workshop that we've got proposed and the working closer between lay members in particular and officials to try and bridge that knowledge. That's the important bit, but certainly my overall impression is that we've done okay. We've had good progress. Our actions are being knocked through. We get very good papers, and I think the subcommittee is in a pretty good position, recognizing that we know that we want to do more and will address that in the near future. If I can make just one, I will be making one small change, and that is 3 paragraphs from the bottom. I'll be taking training and from the development programme. It'll just be a development programme. Us old grey people don't do training no more. That's my view. I think it's just a subliminal thing. So, any feedback or comments or things anyone wants to violently disagree with on that letter to the CJC? All happy on that? Grand. In that case, we will crack on to item 10, the annual report of complaints, concerns and requests for information. Page 59. Jane, to you, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think I can hopefully take you through this quite briefly. The short summary is that we haven't received any complaints. There are links within the body of the report to the various policies and protocols that we have. But in terms of corporate complaints or complaints from or via the Ombudsman, no complaints have been received during the last 12 months. Although it's not strictly the remit of this committee, I take the opportunity of including reference to complaints in the Members' Code of Conduct. Again, we've received none during the preceding 12 months. We haven't received any whistleblowing reports. No Welsh language complaints have been received. There have been no data protection breaches reported to the Corporate Joint Committee during the last 12 months. We have received some data subject access requests, which are being dealt with in the normal way. And we have also received 14 at the time of writing the report requests under the Freedom of Information Act. And there's a short summary of the nature of those requests at paragraph 17 of the report. I can see a lot of hands shot up.
Thank you, Jane. Just one question from me, and that is, great that there are no complaints, etc., etc., etc. Is that because we are great, because we're off the radar, or because people don't know about us?
Well, I'd like to say it's the former, but of course we're a brand new public body, so I think an awful lot of people don't know of our existence yet. I think there could be improvements in the navigation of our website to assist people to find this information and know how they wish to submit a complaint if they want to. And in terms of Welsh language in particular, I'd suggest that's a matter that this committee might want to keep an eye on in the next 12 months, because our compliance notice is very new. Our compliance notice was issued in April last year, so we're 12 months into it, but most of the actions only became effective in October. So it's slightly misleading to say there's no complaints for 12 months, because in fact it's since October.
But the reality is that should the pendulum swing the other direction, the workload could increase quite considerably. That's just back to risk, isn't it? Enough from me. Kate, to you, please.
Chair, and accepting that it is first year and part of that first year, my antennae always starts to twitch when I see kind of nearly nil return in this way. And I'm curious about whether part of that is because it feels like quite a local authority approach to complaints and concerns for an organisation that is may need to evolve a kind of different, more nuanced approach, thinking about its kind of stakeholders and the sorts of things that they may want to raise. For me, I like to see complaints as much as compliments, as I'm sure many others on the call do, because I think it's an opportunity to learn, isn't it? So I think, yeah, so for me, I think there's how we reflect over the next 6 months to a year on, you know, as you've already touched on, Jane, how we are making people aware of this, how we are evolving the process to be right for this organisation, but also what are the other mechanisms for involvement. So if in 12 months' time there is another report that comes back with very low levels, rather than thinking everything is rosy in the garden, what other listening mechanisms are we using? So you know, conversations with unions, staff, surveys, other, you know, stakeholder surveys that are giving us a broader picture, because otherwise, as a committee, we'll be learning nothing and therefore able to contribute very little back to the organisation. So yeah, I think from within the remit of this committee is just kind of thinking about those processes from a governance, risk and assurance process, and is this working over the next few months?
So how do we develop proactive antennae for what's happening and how we're being perceived? Is that the sort of word?
Yeah, and I'm sure some of that stuff already. I'll let Jane answer, and then because hopefully she's kind of grasped where I'm coming from with it.
Yeah, and one of the matters that we will need to take forward quite early in the new municipal year is a public participation strategy. Certainly at present, we live stream our meetings, we upload recordings to our own website, to YouTube, and we have a petitions policy, and we have never once received one petition, one request to how can I go about doing that. And we never get requests for members of the public to join these meetings, albeit that we know that they can view the meetings online if they're minded to. But our hits of how many people are watching these meetings and following what's happening are quite low. And I think that's probably beyond just the complaint sphere. It's the wider messaging of, do people know what a corporate joint committee is, who Cardiff Capital Region are, what we're doing. I hope that will grow. We've got the regional transport plan, the draft regional transport plan out for consultation at the moment. I'm sure that will pique interest. And next year we'll be getting into street development planning in more earnest, which again I hope will continue to pique interest. But I think also suggestions that have been made around joint working between committees, so opportunities to work across committees, could be a way of supplementing that, because if scrutiny are more engaged in the work of governance and audit and vice versa, and across the board, it's just all the time raising the message and profile of us as an organisation. But equally, we are an infant organisation in that sense.
Yeah, can I just respond really quickly to that, to say that so thank you, Jane. I could make a lot of comments now, but I feel, just coming back to what you were saying earlier, Chair, about those development days, this would be a great one to have on the agenda around how we as members understand how people are feeling in terms of the governance of the organisation. So perhaps we could add it, rather than getting into it, rather than me raising all of those comments now, maybe that's something that could be included in one of those development days.
That sounds good. Okay, thank you for that. That's useful. I saw Jonathan scribbling away as you were speaking, so that's grand. Good, thank you. Any more, Case? Your hand's still grand. Cheryl, to you, please.
I was just going to echo some of the comments that Kate has already raised, really, about, it's always a worry. I always get worried when there's no complaints coming in at all, because you kind of think, that doesn't necessarily mean that we should be patting ourselves on the back. So I'd echo the comments that Kate has raised, and the way forward suggested with the developmental workshops. What I wanted to ask Jane was, I noticed that you've mentioned that we've had 14 freedom of information requests. I just wondered, I'm assuming that predominantly those have come from the media and members of the press, but I wondered whether it might be useful to have just a little bit of a breakdown in future reports to indicate where those freedom of information requests are coming from. So whether it is random members of the public, or whether it's the press or the media or so forth.
I could give you a very quick summary now, if you like. That they're not media inquiries. They probably come from three principal sources: councillors, who are aware of projects that the Corporate Joint Committee are involved in. Members of the public, normally people who've also got, a particular interest in a local project or something that CCR touches on. And then we get all the typical ones that are basically marketing. So asking how many computers we own and what IT will be procuring next year.
Yeah.
But we don't include media inquiries in them unless they're specifically made under the Freedom of Information Act.
Thank you. Please.
Thanks, Alan. Two things from me. So firstly, I just want to check on the complaints to the Ombudsman. Is this the complaints that the Ombudsman has decided to pursue? Because I just wanted to check. I know the Ombudsman could get a report and a request to investigate, but they don't always investigate. In fact, the majority of the time they don't investigate. I think I'm right in saying that usually the organisation gets told, even if that's the case. So I just wanted to check that those numbers are included.
So it's no notification of any complaints either to or from the Ombudsman. I wouldn't be able to comment if the Ombudsman's received anything that they haven't forwarded to us, but
Okay.
No notification.
Cool, great. And then the second one for me is on the Freedom of Information Act requests. So just on the one around EDI provision, I just wanted to dig in really as to what that was regarding, because I think that is something that this committee should be paying attention to. And if there is concerns, whether it's coming from elected members or the public around our EDI, that we should be aware of what those requests were so that we can make sure that any action is taking place that's needed.
Yeah, it wasn't a request. It wasn't a request that amounted to a complaint. It was a pure request for information. So, do we have a dedicated equality, diversity, and inclusion officer? What policies have we got? That sort of thing.
Thank you. Liam.
Chair, it's me, if that's okay, Kelly. I'm in the room. Sorry, I've been in and out a little bit this morning. Chair, I just wanted to address the issue about sort of complaints and the kind of organisation we are, because as Jane said, not only are we a fledgling organisation, I guess what we do is quite different to local authorities. So Councillor Carr, to give you an example, we got quite excited once that we got a complaint about, we thought great opportunity, we had it in digitally, we can respond, we can get some feedback. But somebody'd actually slipped very sadly on a pavement in Cardiff and mistook us for Cardiff Council. So that kind of shows that, the difference in sort of perception and the kinds of things we do. That said, though, I fully take your point. And I think what we get a lot of, and what our work tends to do, because it's investment based, it's project based. We're out at the moment consulting on the transport plan, the delivery plan for the strategic development plan. We get a lot of feedback. We spark a lot of debate and provocation and challenge. And I think what we should try and think about in the future is how we capture the essence of that. They may not be transactional service complaints, but it's still getting a good feel for what people think, that sentiment analysis, that perception of CCR, which I think could be incredibly powerful as well, coming back to your point.
Kelly, I think that's exactly my point, Kelly, is that it looks and feels like a local authority complaints procedure, and this organisation comes from that, but is not that, and therefore we need to evolve it to something that is fit for purpose to generate the kind of input and information that we want. So thank you. I just really wanted to note that that's exactly the point that I was making.
So, Councillor Carr, I think it'll come back, because you know, Jane's reminded us often about the sort of public participation stuff that you know, as a CJC, I think we should have quite high aspirations for. So I think we can bring that back, as you say, for debate around the days. But in terms of the governance, you know, to remind everyone, we've got 14 different committees that we're operating at the moment. So we get a lot of feedback and input, contributions from those as well. So trying to distill that into something purposeful is something that I'm very much excited upon. And again, I think as we evolve as an organisation, we can definitely bring that to the fore.
Thank you, Kelly. Anything else from anybody on this then, please? No, good. We're asked to note the content and the 7 recommendations in the report. I think we've had a chance to do that, and we're happy. If everyone's happy, we will move on to item 11, which is the updated contract procedural rules, page 64. To you again, Jane, please.
Thank you again, Chair. So the contract procedure rules have been updated to reflect the requirements of the new Procurement Act that came into force in February of this year. The rules are obviously for officers to follow to help ensure that the Corporate Joint Committee's procurement activity is compliant, is lawful and good practice. The key changes under the new Act are improvements in transparency with minimum levels of competition set out, and a significant increase in the additional published notices of the various stages of the procurement life cycle. And the Corporate Joint Committee very closely follows Rhonda Keane and Taft's contract procedure rules because RCT provide us with a procurement service pursuant to an SLA. So these are contract procedure rules that, with only minor changes, have already been through RCT's governance process as well. They're included in the appendix. I don't propose to say a great deal more about them, but I'm very happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Jane. Any questions or comments, please? Andrew?
Thank you. Just for my benefit, Jane, I'm going to use an extreme example.
Mm-hmm.
If I wanted to purchase a pencil, would that purchase be subject to these procurement rules?
So one of the important thresholds are procurements that are above or below £30,000. I don't think that you'd get in too much trouble if you bought a pencil, though.
So there's no tendering requirement for that, or any sort of need to demonstrate value for money?
No, below
Excellent.
£30,000, a direct award can be made. But there's still a direct award notice that, you know, sets out and is publicly available what it is that we bought and why.
Sounds eminently sensible. Thank you, Jane.
Cheryl, please.
I was just going to ask, it's about the £30,000 threshold, really. What measures are in place to ensure that you're not awarding multiple contracts of under 30,000 to the same company for similar things? Because there's, potential loophole there, isn't there?
Yeah. Well, certain. So within internally, there are a suite of documents that sit behind this. So there's always a contract initiation document that comes first of all to CCR Legal. We have a contracts and procurement specialist solicitor, and the procurement service sitting at RCT. And just because a threshold exists doesn't mean to say that it's applied. It's applied without thought. So something might be £29,000, but you have a look at, you receive a contract initiation document and a intention to direct award report. Those are documents that are still published. Those are documents that are still can be scrutinised, and just because you can do it doesn't mean that you necessarily should do it. So the intention is to provide officers with the guidance that sits behind the rules, and also the greatly increased transparency that's come under the new Act. Mark may possibly be able to assist just in terms of the procurement services input to this. But certainly in the last 12 months, in our first 12 months of working together with RCT's procurement service, my understanding of it is that it's been a really, really productive working relationship. It's worked very well. Officers work well together, and there are real clear and transparent lines of communication. I think we've improved our procurement in the last 12 months.
Yeah, I'll just come in there. So the contract procedure rules talk about estimated contract values, and there's a statement in this which I can't find at the moment, which says that officers can't purposely
add them up.
So officers can't purposely manipulate the contract value to make them fit that table within the contract procedure rules. So I think that what you were saying there is that if there was multiple contracts for £29,000 for the same type of contract, our procurement service will work with the CJC staff to make sure that they're looking at the entire contract as a whole, working it up, what's included, what's involved, how much, what's the total value, and then at that point we would look at the contract procedure rules to see what route the procedure would need to follow then. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, I think what I think what I was concerned about is that there's the opportunity, isn't there? And I know that it has happened elsewhere where multiple contracts have been awarded, and independently they've all been absolutely above board. But when you look at the cumulative total, they've been in excess of £250,000 or something like that. You think, oh my God, what's going? That's not good governance. That's not what we should be doing. So just to have that reassurance that that loophole is closed then. So thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. Colin, please.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know with RTT whether they're in house with procurement or it's contracted out, because some councils are going down that process. And I was also concerned about with the large projects that are ongoing, where the procurement would sit within that, whether it would assist in developing the region and helping small and medium businesses to benefit from the projects of the CJC.
So the Corporate Joint Committee has an in-house contracts and procurement lawyer. The actual procurement service is provided by Rhonda Kinnataff, and we have the head of procurement is our key contact, and then of course his director. We also then have 3 procurement officers that we work with quite closely on our day-to-day procurement activity. That service level agreement that we have with RCT covers the majority of our procurement activity. If there was something that were particularly complex or particularly time consuming, then that would be a conversation that we'd have with the procurement service about whether that fell within our SLA, or whether it was something that we do as a bolt on or even look to do externally. In the last 12 months, that hasn't happened. RCT has delivered all of our procurement requirements for us.
Right. Well, thanks, Jane. I was just going to say, so could we identify as a
procurement strategy?
Well, what volume of the funds that CJC are channeling are going via procurement? How is it a big part of of the financial strategy or not?
Yeah, I think we'd probably need to dig into our budget. I'm not going to have those figures immediately at my fingertips, I'm afraid. But for example, on the investment side of the work that the Corporate Joint Committee does, there's quite a healthy spend on things like commercial, financial and legal due diligence. So separating out what are the procurement costs of delivering the projects that we're seeking to deliver is something that we could analyse and do. I can't tell you at this moment though.
Right, okay. I was just sort of trying to separate it out from the projects and whether procurement is in those projects or whether that would be a separate fund.
Yeah, so if we took, it's not a separate fund, but if we took an example of a project, I mean, take the example of Aberthaw, to deliver the Aberthaw project, a huge amount of due diligence went into that. You know, there was a lot of people looking at the legals, a lot of people looking at the financials, a lot of people looking at the commercial case. Now, there does exist, I just simply don't know off the top of my head, a breakdown of what percentage of what it cost us to get the project over the line. Now, that's all procurement activity. You know, each of those legal advisors, financial advisors, commercial advisors, and so on and so forth were procured. And not with RCT. Aberthaw, in one sense, is a bad example because it predates our current arrangements. But yes, for each project business case, there will be a breakdown of the cost that went into delivering the project.
That's great. Oh, thanks. I just thought it'd be, you know, part of perhaps of our business, going forward to examine that. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Liam, please.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just to come in and give the committee assurance, I suppose, on, we talked about that threshold being £30,000, but there is an onus on everyone to ensure value for money below £30,000 as well, through, you know, getting multiple quotes, that sort of thing. So to use Andrew's example, if somebody bought a pencil for £29,000, they'd be in a bit of trouble.
His name would be Andrew, by the look of it. Thank you, Liam. Phil. Phil, your hands up. Can't hear you.
I think he's on. You're on mute, Councillor.
Yeah, there we go. The computer wouldn't play for me. After having sat through a lecture on procurement yesterday as chair of a scrutiny committee, I'm an expert on procurement. But what came over very clearly yesterday is most of us don't have to worry. Do we have the availability to tap into the local government consortium? Because they cover most things to an amazing extent and to an amazing value. So lots of your tendering work's already been done. And when I said, oh, well, if I wanted to buy a JCB because it's fairly topical at the moment, they said it's not a problem. And they told me which local authority I could buy a JCB through, and without any paperwork at all, other than scribbling my name on a piece of paper. And similarly, what was the South Wales Consortium, I'm told still exists, and they told me which authorities were responsible for those areas. So the very small question is, did the CJC have access to the consortium on consortia?
Can you help us, Mark?
Yeah. So I'm not sure in terms of the consortiums that you refer to there, Councillor, but the public sector across the UK does have access to lots of framework contracts. And that means that entities have set up contracts, so they've gone through the tendering process, and they allow public sector bodies, and the CJC is one of them, to access those contracts. That doesn't mean to say that there's no further tendering procedures, because there are. Most framework contracts, you need to undertake a further tender process to ensure value for money and to make sure that you're getting exactly what you need as well. So yeah, so I'm not entirely sure of the JCB example that you used there, but just to give members assurance really that there are frameworks available. We do use them in consultation with CJC, but sometimes the requirements of what is needed from the CJC are so bespoke that there aren't frameworks available, for example. So we'll help them to go through a proper process and following the contract procedure rules, etc.
But pre-tender approval has already been sought for various companies for various type projects, particularly, and let's leave Aberthaw to one side because that's so unique. It's well, it's never likely to happen in South Wales again. But if we wanted a building project, if we wanted to build a leisure centre, or we wanted to build a sewerage plant or something like along those lines, lots of the work's already been done for us.
Yeah, so I think that sounds like the framework context that we all use across the public sector. Yeah, but that doesn't mean to say that no further tendering work is needed.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Anything else from anybody on this item? No. If I could ask just one final question. It says that the document is effective from February 2025. Do we build in a review date for a new
Yes.
process like this?
Yes, so we've got we're in a slightly strange situation now because the Public Contracts Regulations 2015 continue to apply to a lot of our procurements, and then so existing procurements that we have that took place before the 24th of February are following one set of rules. Post-February, they're following a second set of rules. So on the website in the Constitution, we've got both of them published, and both will remain published. But these new contract procedure rules, I think, should be reviewed annually, or more frequently if there's a need to.
Good, thank you. Good. We are, in that case, finished discussing on this item. We're asked to approve the updated contract procedural rules. Could I have someone to propose that, please? Reese to propose. Andrew to second. Thank you. Show of hands. All those in favour. Good. Thank you very much. That's approved. We will then move on to item 12. Thank you, Jane, for those last items. Item 12, Head of Internal Audit's annual report for 24-25 starts on page 98 of the pack, and this is either Mark or Lisa. I'm not sure who's leading on this, but I'll turn to you first, Mark.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So the purpose of this report is to provide members of the Governance and Audit Committee with a copy of the Head of Internal Audit's annual report. In terms of the background, the public sector internal audit standards provide the structure for the report, and this annual report supports the CJC's annual governance statement. The report gives members an overview of the work undertaken by the service, along with a summary of the individual audit opinions given, and also with the number of recommendations made for each assignment. Section 2 of the report gives an overview of the performance of the service during the year, and as noted, 86% of the audit plan was completed to report stage, with details in respect to why 100% of the plan was not completed also provided in Section 2. So the work completed is summarised in Table 1 of Section 3, and this forms the basis upon which my annual opinion is given. All of the audits completed during the year received a good level of assurance that's either substantial or reasonable, with no high priority recommendations made by the committee, and I think all of this is something that the committee should receive assurance from. Section 4 provides a statement in terms of our conformance with the public sector internal audit standards. Section 5 pulls together all of the work completed during the year. And taking all of this into account, I can confirm that, in my opinion, during the year, the overall governance, risk management and control processes operated effectively, with some areas for improvement. And I'll pause there for any questions that members may have, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. That's very clear and very helpful. Could I just ask one small question? That's at the end of paragraph 5.1, you say there are some areas identified for improvement. How is that improvement tracked?
Yeah, so we'll note as part of the main body of the annual report where we talk about recommendations raised. So I think that there's been high and medium, low recommendations made. And I think we've talked previously about internal audits arrangements around tracking the status of those recommendations. So those are the areas where I say that a small number of areas require improvement. And we can provide assurance that those recommendations have been implemented, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments from anybody else, please? Cheryl. You're on mute, Cheryl.
A really good report, and assuring to know that there's so much good work and no high risk areas being identified. What I did want to ask was in regards to the cybersecurity arrangements. there was 2 medium level recommendations there, bearing in mind that that's on our risk register as well. I wondered if there could be some clarity as to what those recommendations were, and whether it would be possible in future reports to include a summary of what those recommendations may be.
So I think that we can provide those. Yes, sorry. Yes, so I think that we can provide that information in the future, absolutely, and maybe we can include that as part of the ongoing reports the committee gets during the year. And if I could ask Lisa to provide the information in terms of the background for those 2 recommendations, please.
Yeah,
Thank
no
you.
problem at all. Happy to assist on this one. The 2 recommendations raised on this particular audit, one of them was in relation to the service level agreement. So the point raised was that the copy of the service level agreement that the auditor cited had only been signed by one party, so it hadn't been signed by both the Rhondda Cynon and the CJC. So we recommended that, you know, a signed copy is obtained every year and kept by both parties, so that during the year there's no issues that could arise in respect of any agreements. And the other recommendation that was made was in relation to the cyber training. We spoke earlier on about there's cyber training available to all staff. And I think when the auditor did some testing, whilst the majority of staff had undertaken the cyber training, there were 1 or 2 individuals that hadn't done the training, so the training record wasn't up to date for all staff. But I know that report has been issued now, and management are working on implementing those recommendations.
Thank you.
Lisa. Anything else from anybody on this item? No, we're asked if we're content to endorse the item. Anyone want to say they're not happy to endorse it? Good, I'll take that as read. In that case, we'll move on to item 13, page 106, and again back to Mark and or Lisa to help us with this one, please.
This one will be me, Chair. So agenda item 13 is our internal audit charter for 25-26, and we are presenting the charter today in conformance with the global internal audit standards in the UK and the public sector. And this is to ensure that Governance and Audit Subcommittee has oversight of the purpose, the mandate and authority of the Internal Audit Service, which is hosted by Rhondda Cynon Council. So there's some background information then at report reference 4, in that the global internal audit standards replace the public sector internal audit standards with effect from the 1st of April. And the standards form the framework that should be followed by all internal audit services across the world. They apply to both private and public sector organisations, and the Internal Audit Service is committed to conforming with the new standards. And at report reference 5, we've detailed that the framework consists of 5 domains, and the 5 domains are underpinned by 15 principles. Each principle is then further supported by a set of standards that contain requirements for internal audit services to comply with. Some of these are mandatory to follow, and others are more considerations or suggestions of good practice. And the overall aim of the standards is to deliver a professional service and to drive improvement. So at report reference 6, we've identified that the standards require internal audit to have a charter. It's a formal document. It includes the purpose, mandate and scope of the internal audit service. And in accordance with domain 3 standard 6.2, the charter is presented annually to the Governance and Audit Subcommittee. At report reference 8, we've detailed that the charter has been completely reviewed and updated this year to take into account the new standards that became effective, and a full copy of the internal audit charter is attached at Appendix A to the report, where a more detailed overview is presented. Report reference 9 refers to the charter and just brings out the purpose of internal audit. It brings out how the service is governed, how the service is managed and held to account, and the arrangements in place to support internal auditors through the process of completing individual audit assignments. I think you'll see from the main body of the appendix that there are 5 domains, and perhaps for the purposes of today, I'll just pick out some key points for domain 3, which is the governing the internal audit function. So to summarise some of the key principles, which are the foundations of an effective internal audit service and governance and audit subcommittee. Domain 3 sets out the regulatory mandate for internal audit and governance and audit committee. It sets out how the committee fulfills its purpose using a work plan. It sets out the scope of internal audit activity, including the right of access to records, the reporting lines for the head of audit to ensure there's independence and objectivity. It sets out the requirement for an internal audit charter, which helps deliver and demonstrate good governance. And it also sets out that a strong and effective quality assurance improvement and reporting process needs to be in place. And I'm happy to take any questions, Chair, on the charter.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Any questions or comments, please? Andrew?
So thank you. I thought the overall document was very clear. I suppose I think we should draw attention to paragraphs 4.8 and 4.9, which do cause me some concern. It is, so pretty unusual in my experience that the head of audit has functional responsibilities for business areas, but leaving that aside, that's a matter for your local authority. But Lisa, can you tell me a bit more about how that conflict or potential conflict will be managed? You referenced it in 4.9, but just say a few more words about if we were to ask you to audit our procurement activity, how you'd go about it and how you would then exclude the head of audit from that work, please.
Yeah, of course, happy to answer that question. Well, I think firstly, I think it's key to see that the transparency in making that statement, just to make committee members aware that the conflict with the head of audit also having other responsibilities. I think just to reassure members, operationally, the internal audit function is managed by myself. So the internal audit planning, the allocation of work, working with auditors on individual assignments, the draft reports that are written are reviewed by myself. I work with the auditors on management responses and finalised reports. So every part of the audit process is dealt with by myself and the auditors. So Mark would not be involved in the day-to-day operational function of the internal audit service, and particularly if there was any kind of conflict with any report that we were writing, if it crossed over into an area Mark was responsible for, we would make, or even one of the auditors, because it's a requirement that auditors on an annual basis declares any conflict of interest. So as part of the audit planning process, it's my role to make sure that audits are allocated to auditors who are completely independent and impartial in their role.
If I could come in there, please, Chair, as well.
Okay.
I can give the committee assurance that I've got no involvement in terms of the annual planning process when it comes to procurement. So when we sat down with Liam and Harjinder to go through the plan, that was the sort of needs assessment, and Lisa had identified through discussions with Liam and Harjinder that the procurement would be audited during the year. So I have absolutely no involvement whatsoever in the annual planning process, but also during the actual scoping of any individual audit, having any involvement in answering any questions in terms of the audit. So those discussions take place with operational managers within procurement, and if needed, then my service director within Rhondda Cynon Taf if there's any issues that need to be addressed.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
Does it answer your question, Andrew?
It does. Thank you.
I've now lost complete visibility of this meeting. My devices, I mentioned my third device was failing. It's now gone. So I'll be flying blind for the next bit. I can't see any hands up at all. So I may need some help.
No hands, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. So we are asked to, if we are content to approve the internal audit charter, could I have someone to propose that, please? Again, I can't see. I don't know what on earth's going on here.
Cheryl Hooker's proposing, Chair.
Thank you. And a seconder?
Andrew Blackmore.
All those in favour?
That's carried,
Good.
Chair.
Thank you very much, Jane. Thank you for your help there. We'll move on then to item 14, the draft risk-based internal audit plan 25-26 on page 134. Lisa, I think it's yours again, please.
Yes, Chair. And so this item is the purpose of this report is to provide Governance and Audit Subcommittee with our draft risk-based internal audit plan for 2025-26. And in accordance with the committee's terms of reference and in accordance with the global internal audit standards, the plan is being presented to keep members informed and for formal approval today. So some background again at number 4 in the report, we've detailed that the global standards came into effect on the 1st of April, replacing the previous public sector standards. And these standards provide the framework which we need to follow by and all other internal audit services when compiling an audit plan. So report reference 5 details that the standards require the head of internal audit to establish a risk-based plan, and this is to determine the priorities of the internal audit service, and this needs to be consistent with the organisation's goals. The purpose of the audit plan, as detailed at report reference 6, is to ensure that the organisation achieves its objectives by providing assurance in respect to the governance, risk management and control processes that are in place. So a full consultation process took place with the Section 151 officer in March 25 when compiling the draft risk-based plan, and the internal audit charter, which we discussed previously, provides the methodology by which the plan is compiled. Reference 8 of the report details that the plan is set to conform with the standards, and it also allows the committee to monitor the adequacy of the organisation's governance, risk and control processes based on the audits that are set out in the plan. It also allows at the end of the year the head of audit to form an opinion on the overall control environment as detailed in the head of audit's annual report. Report reference 9, we've detailed that in accordance with the standards, we have an audit plan which is fixed for 1 year. It outlines the assignments to be carried out, the priorities and the resources that are needed. And during the planning process, we carried out an audit needs assessment, and this has confirmed that we will have the resources to deliver the plan in the year. And we've also got the competencies within the team to deliver the work. Appendix A provides the full detail of the audit plan and the planned assignments, and you will note that there's one audit in there carried forward from last year. So the overriding objective of the planning exercise is to ensure that the audit service fulfills its mandate and purpose, and the results of the work that are completed will allow us to conclude with an overall opinion at the end of the year. I'm happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Any questions or comments, please? No, all clear, all happy with that. In that case, we are asked to approve, if we are contented to approve the plan. Could I have someone propose that, please? Thank you, Cheryl. Anyone to second? Andrew, thank you very much. All in favour, raise, please. Thank you very much. We'll move on then to item 15, which is the annual business plan. Kelly, this is to you, please.
I'll take this one, Chair.
Oh, there we are.
Yeah. So this looks at the Q3 performance across the organisation. So the wider investment fund spend was broadly in line with expectations. There was some slippage into Q4, but we're still on track to spend in line with budget for the year. Paragraph 10 of the report outlines some of the key investments made in the quarter. Just a couple to pick out is a sites and premises loan for 108,000 square foot office and retail space in John Street in Cardiff, and a further equity investment into human data sciences, a really innovative medtech company doing great work in the region. We've also put on and supported a number of events across the region, and these are outlined in paragraph 11 of the report. So this included the launch of our MIPIN 2025 campaign, which was very well attended, and we were joined by Dame Nia Griffiths MP. CCR Energy continue to make good progress against their business plan, and work is currently underway to develop the next iteration of their business plan, which will focus on a limited number of initiatives that can have maximum impact, such as the national grid reconnection and the valorisation of pulverised fuel ash. And then finally, Chair, at paragraph 20, it provides details of our recycled funds, which at the end of Q3 totaled £11.2 million, and that's risen by the end of the year to over £19 million, which is again demonstrating the value of our evergreen approach to investment. So this report was taken to the CJC meeting of the 31st of March and approved at that meeting. And it's just brought to this committee for noting, Chair, but happy to take any questions and comments.
Thank you very much, Liam. That's good. Any comments or questions up to Liam, please? We're all happy? So we're asked to note, we've had a chance to ask questions. Thank you very much. We'll move on then to item 16. Where are we? So item the Treasury Management Strategy, page 168 of your pack. Liam, back to you again, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So this report contains the Treasury Management Strategy. Again, this is a report that was approved by the CJC on the 31st of March. Due to the approval timescales involved, it wasn't possible to bring this report to the committee prior to it being approved by the CJC. We'll commit to make sure that doesn't happen in future, and it'll be brought to the committee prior to that March deadline. To mitigate against that, this year we did share a draft with the chair and the vice chair of the committee, who helpfully provided feedback. So thanks to both for that. So the strategy itself has been developed in line with SIPFA's Treasury Management in Public Services Code of Practice, and has been guided by our Treasury Management advisors, who are Arlene Close. Similarly to the Treasury Management Q3 report, much of the information contained within the report isn't necessarily applicable to the CJC at this moment in time, as we don't have any borrowings and don't intend to undertake any borrowings in the next 12 months. And to reiterate my earlier comments, we've got a very low risk appetite in this area, and we currently invest all of our surplus funds with the UK Government's Debt Management Office. And picking up on Andrew's question earlier, that gives us limited yield, albeit yield that we are comfortable with, and I am comfortable with, given that this is a low risk appetite area for us. So there are two key changes really since in this strategy compared to last year. The first one is to reflect that we now manage our treasury management operations in-house, whereas previously they were managed by RCT. And this change was necessitated by us needing to have our own bank account as a legal entity, and it just made sense then for us to manage our operations in-house at the same time then. So that's been in operation since early March, and is operating well. And the other key change then is to increase the counterparty limit for A-minus counterparties. It was previously £5 million, and it's to increase that to £10 million. That's taken under advice from our treasury management advisors, Arlene Close, and ultimately is just to provide us with operational flexibility on our own bank account, given that all of our lendings are with the Debt Management Office. And for members to be aware, this is in line and within the limits that the 10 local authorities within the region have for similar counterparties. As I said, this strategy was approved at the CJC meeting at the 31st of March. It's brought to the committee for noting, but happy to take any questions on it, Chair.
Thank you, Liam. Very helpful. Any comments or questions, please, to Liam? No? Good. Well, yet again, Liam, well done. Well presented. We're asked to note the content of that. We've had a chance to ask questions. I think we will note the content of that report, and thank you for that. That brings us, I think, to the end of the meeting. Thank you all for coming. Can you stay on once the recording stops, just to do a quick review of what we've done? Looking ahead, well, firstly, thank you for the papers that came to us. I thought they're all good stuff this morning. Well presented, and that was shown by the number of occasions that there weren't, nitpicky questions that came through them. It was a good session in that regard. So thank you for that. Next meeting date, I don't think is yet to be set. It'll be sometime, hopefully before the end of June. But it links back to now planning the workshop activity and getting that all scheduled. And part of a look forward, we really ought to nail the dates for the 25-26 meetings, so it's all diary well ahead. But if anyone has nothing else to say, I will ask the recording to stop and draw the meeting to a close.